Let's see, does this work? Yes, it works well, huh? Everyone can hear? What a great turnout. Beautiful evening. Wonderful to have you all here. My name is Mark Conway. I'm with the Literary Arts Institute, and it was our pleasure to put together tonight's event. We just noticed that there was an outpouring of literary activity from members of the community. Some people who've been involved with this community for years and years and years, some brand new people. So it's a variety of voices, and we're going to have it's a sample tonight that you get to hear. As I mentioned, there are some very new books just out, and so I anticipate and hope that some of these readers tonight will be reappearing again soon, and you can get more of their work in a reading somewhere down the line. But tonight we're going to hear from 7 different people, all of whom have a relationship with St. Ben's and St. John's of some sort. So we have a recently retired faculty member, we have a brand new faculty member, we have faculty members who've been here for a number of years, or half a dozen. We have a staff member who just retired after being here for many years, alumnus, and then many of them wear many hats too. There are some people who belong to about 5 parts of the Venn diagram of St. Ben's and St. John's. So we also have, it just happened that there are 2 main presses, so I'll just mention them. Finishing Line Press, 2 brand new books, chapbooks that you'll hear from tonight, and then North Star Press is also well represented this evening. Betsy is a North Star author, but she, I think, is going to be reading from another press. So the minority press is Mayapple Press. But just wanted to shout out to North Star too, which also has all kinds of St. John, St. Ben's connections. So it's that kind of family night, and it's wonderful to see these faces here, people who have been involved with the schools for so long. I'm not going to introduce them. The way that we're going to do this is that each reader, once they have finished, will introduce the next person. And it'll be short, and it's not going to be voluminous about all of their many accomplishments, but rather want to keep this moving. Bookstore is over there and has copies of all of the things that there's some people are going to read new material, but we're well represented with books there. Please do have a look afterwards. The writers will, I'm sure, stick around and be happy to sign your copy. As I mentioned, I'm with Literary Arts Institute, so I have to put in a plug. We haven't even started tonight, but there's also some other readings coming up next week. So J.F. Powers, talking about old-time connections to these schools, his daughter Catherine will be here with a really amazing book of his letters that has been very well reviewed. There's Trish Hampel has a review in the current Commonweal that I really recommend. It's wonderfully done. So she'll be here in Goretzky Theater on Tuesday at 7 o'clock. And then the next evening, we have Rue Freeman here. Every year we sponsor a book with Grey Wolf Press in honor of Sister Mary Ella Gable, another longtime member of this community. And so Rue's book is the recipient of that award. She'll be here Wednesday, also at 7, also in Goretzky. Okay, phones off, if anyone still has. And with that, the last reader, since she won't have anyone after her, she'll start things off. Mary Hughes is here to introduce our first reader. Mary.
Thanks, Martin. Has a little mind of its own, I think. It's my great, great pleasure to introduce Sister Mara Faulkner. Beloved member of the faculty for many years, 34 I believe she's taught, and during that time thousands of students. She grew up in North Dakota, which maybe many of you already know, her roots deep there, and her book called Going Blind has a memoir, has a lot of her history from the Dakotas, from growing up there. She's thrived at St. Benedict's as a Benedictine nun and as a beloved teacher by so many. She also has a new book called Stillbirth, which is over on the table, and that's the finishing line book. And the first poem in this book is called Things I Didn't Know I Loved. Yeah, I should have opened it up first. It's a wonderful poem, and it won the prestigious Foley Award, which is selected by the editors from America Magazine. So you know it's a high-class poem for a high-class lady in a high-class magazine. So without any further, we're to keep it moving. Sister Mara Faulkner, please welcome her warmly.
Well, let's see. I guess that's all right. Thanks, Mary, and thank you all for coming. I have been thinking lately about where poetry comes from, and there are two reasons for that. One is that I've been teaching or leading a couple of poetry workshops through the Spirituality Center at the monastery, and we've been thinking and talking about that. Well, where does it come from? And the other reason is that since Finishing Line Press published Stillbirth, I haven't written a single poem nor a single line of poetry. And so I thought, well, maybe it's all gone. And so I've been going back and looking at where some poems came from and thinking, well, maybe I can get a clue from myself. So I'm going to read just 3, and each of them came from a different source. The first one came from a recipe box, and it's called Baked Beans, A Word from the Dead. And the dead person is my brother, who died a few years ago. How I long for a voice to break the long silence, a country strange and vast without sustenance. A word in dream or vision to say, I'm safe home, I'm happy, I'm myself and more, the person you knew and loved and didn't know. Day and night I'm listening, but not a word. My brother is silent in death as he was in life. When his mother and sisters waited months or years for a letter or a call, as he trudged west, shedding possessions and people. Just at the end, he turned and flashed a smile, and then was gone. Though he's in that new place where distance disappears in the twinkling of an eye, or so they say, he is silent as God, withholding comfort in the conspiracy of death. But then, from the friendly darkness of my recipe box, I hear his voice, laughing, defiant, sandwiched between beets and broccoli bake. His recipe for baked beans, sent just before he died. I use pinto beans, but I suppose Great Northern would work too. I just don't trust anything white. Does that make me racist? Mix in 2 tablespoons of mustard. Make this the stone ground, not that yellow crap that people put on their hot dogs. Bake at 250 for 9 hours. These are earthy words. Like dreams and visions, they tell me only what I know. In a kitchen smelling of onions and molasses, feed each other good food, cooked slowly, while you laugh and talk and do good work. It isn't much. People have lived on less. And then the second one, let's see, here it is. One year when I was teaching and horrendously busy and felt as if I would never have time to write another poem, one of my students gave me this little tiny box that was made in Thailand, and it's filled with very small pieces of paper, just big enough to write 1 line of poetry, so you never had to feel like you had to write a whole poem. And so that's what I did, and stuffed this little box full of pieces of paper. And then one day, lo and behold, a crow flew out. And here's the poem that came from that. Crows. 2 heavy-bodied crows peck at fallen plums. Then, like a fat old couple at a small-town wedding, who heave themselves up from the folding chairs and dance the lightest, most graceful polka, their feet barely touching the cafeteria tiles, the crows take flight. Bodies suddenly sleek and slim, their wings outspread like eager hands, reaching for their springtime love. And then finally, the poem that Mary mentioned, sorry. One of the things I say to my students all the time is that the ratio of gift poems to work poems is 1 to 99. And if you wait for gift poems to fall out of the sky, you'll write one by the time you're 99 years old. And, and I've been working on my 99 work poems, but I have one gift poem, and I think this one is it. I don't know where it came from. Things I Didn't Know I Loved. This is an epigram from Nazim Hikmet, who was a Turkish political prisoner. I know all this has been said 1,000 times before and will be said after me. I didn't know I loved the wrangle of phones and human voices, rough, insistent, until I entered this silence and closed the door. I didn't know I loved this silence until the hooked voices reached for me. I didn't really know I loved the treeless prairies until green bars grew up between my eyes, the airy sunset, and the moon. Didn't know I loved the thorny green thickets of the self, myself, contrary and bare-haunted, until I took the straight, smooth road and found it strewn with death. I didn't know I loved black bears lumbering through my dreams toward my sister, whom I didn't know I loved, even though I've lost her now in the blind thicket, and she doesn't love me anymore. I didn't know I loved my mother until her rose heart burst and bled red petals into her chest. Didn't know I loved the garden of her flesh. And you, my God, under her ashes, so silent and so cold, I didn't know I loved you until you woke every morning in my little stove, so lowly in your prison house of wood and flesh and fire, so eager and so needful of my hands. I didn't know I loved my hands, clumsy, tender, until they stirred the fire and found these words. Thank you very much. And now it's my pleasure to introduce my friend Karen Erickson. She and I have been part of a very tiny poetry group, like 2 people. That's as tiny as they get, if you still call it a group, for at least 20 years. And it really is thanks to her encouragement and her nudging that I continue to write poetry and continue to try to publish it. Karen has published recently with Finishing Line Press this beautiful book called Dwellings, and she's going to be reading from that tonight. Before this book came out, she also has published locally, especially in Headwaters and other places. A couple of her poems have been set to music and performed. And very recently, like today, one of her poems came out in an anthology put out by the Holy Cow Press. It's called Reflections on Home, The Heart is All That Is. And this is very hot off the press. I don't know if that's for sale or not, but I hope it will be soon. Karen is also a musician and composer. She founded the Collegeville Consort and was the director for 25 years. And finally, she is a beloved and award-winning teacher. This past year, she won the Robert Spaeth Award for Excellence in Teaching. She teaches French and gender studies, and she has a special interest, both scholarly and teaching, in the women of the Bible. And all of that probably makes its way into her poetry somehow, I think. Anyway, help me welcome Karen.
And I'll add that without Mara's encouragement and nudging, I wouldn't have sent anything off either. So that's how these poetry groups work. I will read from this collection, Dwellings, and my first poem is called Labyrinth. And I just want to thank Brother David Paul Lang, who designed the cover, who's here. I told him that I wondered if something on the Labyrinth from Chartres might work. And so this is what he did and how he set the entrance. You can see the entrance is a little bit off center, and we seem to be going towards something that's like a flower or like a tree, but we're not really going directly there, are we? So this poem is called Labyrinths. Walking the labyrinth, small puzzles unlock. All the way in, I tread upon tomorrow's tasks, disrupt a clamor of what to do. Controversies dog each step, and I know what I should say, what I should have said. I gauge how far I have walked, how far I have yet to go, wondering if I am doing this right. And then the center suddenly spreads. The fumbling nail finally opens the clasp. The locket rests in satin for the night. Small fears nestle among the links. Thumb becomes clever, measures the fit of the shoe, one small length from tip to toe. The pointer rises in a gesture of speech, but no argument, just the third line of a long-forgotten poem tumbling onto a smooth tongue. Measured steps collide in clothes and skirt. Behind me, the large puzzles stand, arms lifted to the sun, to the moon, to inner light, uninvolved and unconcerned with small solutions. Sentinels marking the unlocked heart and the insoluble path. And the next one is called Revisiting St. Martin in the Fields. So this is what closure feels like, a mild lengthening of clipped phrases and a lingering, solid and full of grief, over memories and places I had to skate over quickly before. Closure is not release. It is a cadence resolved, a weight anchoring the end of something no longer left hanging. No suspense, no airy wondering, no habit of pain, no self rich with suffering. Closure is the signal clicked off. Closure is the floor swept clean of all the remains of the party, the confetti and the broken heel and the water stain on the table, the gift wrap torn in festive frenzy, and the cigarette burn on the prized piano. Closure is the door latching after a long walk on the beach, the cleaning of the shells, the setting them in a bowl where they invariably looked less lovely than you thought they would, dried, unpolished, washed clean of debris. We come to an arrangement, a done thing, a habit soon quite silent, indifferent, like bones. Closure is not life and it is not death. It is an attitude toward the endlessly moving tide that flings up shells for us to find and pocket and clean and then forget. Closure feels like loss when it settles on the heart, but it is rather a solid presence, a window opened so the bee can escape. We did not know she was there when we closed it just as the storm was breaking. And finally, a poem that might be as close to a gift poem as I have. It's called I Am Probably an Oak. I want to be a maple, to spark gasps of marvel at dazzling crimson, aware of near falling, trumpeting color all the same. But I give shade, drop acorns for the squirrels to store in their cheeks, their caches, their forgotten places. I hold on to my leaves, burnished, earthy, even into the winter wind. Or I could be sumac, flamboyant and shocking, electric, poisonous, dangerous, invasive, and unmanageable. Carmen, Liszt, virtuoso and flagrant with many secrets. But I am probably an oak. A rooted canopy, slowly big, my wealth useful, ordinary, my richness brown. A church choir in solid pews ready to sing each Sunday, rising and sitting and kneeling in a familiar cycle, wide arms relaxed at my sides. No triumphant hurrah at the end of the whirling dance. I want to be loved just once with a fatal passion. To be a whip, a crack of lightning, not to stand firm, bending only in hurricane, uprooted by tornado and nothing less. I want the fragile, breathless, beloved filigree, but I am probably an oak. Thank you. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce Larry Schug, who is a well-known, well-loved member of the community. He worked for many years at the College of St. Benedict and was instrumental in designing the very successful recycling programs on campus. He's the author of 6 books of poems, 5 published by North Star Press of St. Cloud, including Nails, published in 2011, Arrogant Bones, which was a 2008 Midwest Book Award finalist, and Caution Thin Ice, a Minnesota Book Award finalist in 1993. His chapbook, Obsessed with Mud, was published by Poetry Harbor, Duluth, Minnesota. And I learned tonight that his book, At Gloaming, will be out in March 2014, also North Star Press. Larry has won 2 Central Minnesota Arts Board grants and a McKnight Fellowship for Writers. And on his website, Larry writes that he lives beside a large tamarack bog with his wife and their dog and cats in St. Wendell Township, Minnesota. Larry.
Wow, awesome. Thanks a lot, Karen. I'm going to read 3 poems. I'm going to step back. That will be in my new book, At Gloaming. This first poem is about my parents, and it's called Kisses, and it's in 3 parts. 1. I was there, hovering somewhere over the horizon of their first kiss. That first real kiss, the kiss where my father got lost, forgot every lonely moment of his orphaned past, realized this touch of lip to lip, tongue to tongue, was the beginning of a new life where he could finally settle. 2. I sat in the back seat with my little brother. That Saturday, Mom drove us down to Wilmer to pick up Dad from the hospital, where he went to dry out. She told him she loved him, was so proud of him, how life would be better now. She was all over him, kissing him in the car like we'd never seen them kiss. Young boys, we were embarrassed, I guess, by the show of overt affection. Mom just laughed, kissed him some more, then turned around and kissed us too. While Dad drove us all home, somehow keeping his hands on the wheel, and in the back seat suddenly became crowded with 5 more yet to be born babies. 3. It was a lingering peck on the cheek, a goodnight kiss, though it's hard to really kiss someone with all those tubes in the way, those monitors blinking, your wife barely breathing. When the phone rang late at night, he answered with a trembling voice, afraid of what he knew he would hear. He kissed her one more time, her skin cold against his lips. Every night during his last years, after his tears had dried, he kissed her in his dreams, and sometimes, he swore, she kissed him in return. So I'll lighten up a little bit here. This poem is called Mending Mittens, and it's for all of you tree hugger kind of people. Mending mittens. Mending my leather mittens for the 3rd time this winter. I sew them with wax string made to repair fishing nets, hoping they'll last until the splitting maul rests against the shrunken wood pile and the hoe and spade come out of the shed. I find myself praying. Blessed be those who have laced together the splits at the seams of this world, repair its threads of twisted waters. Blessed be those who stitch together the animals and the land, repair the rents in the fabric of wolf and forest, of whale and ocean, of condor and sky. Blessed be those who are forever fixing the tear between people and the rest of life. May we all have enough thread. May our needles be sharp. May our fingers not throb or go numb. May each of us find an apprentice, someone who will take the needle from our hands, continue all the mending that needs to be done. And lastly, a poem that takes place at the Holiday Store here in St. Joe. I put the title at the end of the poem because I can do that. I have a poetic license. It's okay. You know, I'm happy to see there are some younger people here tonight. You probably think you stumbled into an AARP meeting or something, but so this is for you guys. This young guy, working dude, I'd guess, cap on backwards, sleeves ripped off his t-shirt at the shoulders, just being respectful, true to good upbringing, holds open the door of the Holiday Store for an old guy I see reflected in the glass. It's me. Holy crap, it's me. I'm an old guy. When did it happen that people open doors for me? I can open my own goddamn door. I'm the one who holds doors open for old folks. I think, I'm going to tell that young pup what's up, and I do. I walk past him, right next to the nut goodies. I nod once, whisper like a truck on gravel. Thanks, dude. So thank you very much. And so, batting cleanup for the Stearns County All-Star Poets here tonight, we have Bob Thimmesh. Bob is a St. John's Prep grad, and you know, the name Thimmesh, you might associate that with St. John's somewhere along the line. I think he's going to read from his book, Hear a Silence Roar. Is that correct? I think so. Which has an awesome cover, by the way. And I do judge books by their covers, I guess. He also has written a chapbook called And the Market's Red Glare. Bob has had poems published in Poetry Motel, Cheer-On Review, California Poetry Quarterly, and among others. He's spent a lifetime of work in various kinds of business. He's also worked for the State Ag Department and Revenue Department. And Bob, take it away. It's your turn. Thank you.
Okay. Get my first one here. Okay, the first poem is titled Keys. I know, I remember, I'm absolutely certain I left my keys on the kitchen table 10 minutes ago in prominent isolation for all to see. They're gone. Who took them? I know, I remember. 3 loads. I was walking down the street, minding my own business, when this 2-tone Ford screeches around the corner, being chased by cops, 3 loads of cops, 1 load stopped, asked what I'd seen, didn't see nothing, This is called Sonnets Black and White. Knowledge is black and white dry multiplication tables, crafted by certitude. Imagination is lime-fizzed orange that rides an undulating bull to Ravel's rhythms. Sometimes my imagination hears a black and white sonnet interlaced with arithmetical constants, a chameleon sonnet masquerading as a palinode. And then finally, hear a silence roar. In the silence to my request, a symbol of a greater roar, one never heard. Should a roar come forth, I will heed its voice, where the hush of infinity intercepts a sibylline sign. My ear is blemished with the burden of a cacophonic information. Has it missed your wisdom, entrusted to the wind? That's it. The next person on the agenda is Besty Johnson-Miller, who's been an instructor in English for 6 years, and she's a member of the North Star Press family. Published 2 young adult novels with North Star, The Bracelet and The Fountain. And she's also a poet with 2 books with Mayapple Press, Rain When You Never Want It to Rain, and Fierce This Falling. Please welcome Besty Johnson-Miller.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and to see such a great turnout, so thank you. The first poem I'm going to read, I was researching something about Buddhism on the internet, and I came across some sayings of the Buddha, and I realized that I could pull out some words and add in the word winter, and it really became interesting. So, and since winter is soon upon us, this is called What If Winter Is My Buddha? I concentrate on envy, for those who are free of winter are surely at peace. Holding on to winter like a hot coal, intent on throwing it at someone else, I am not about to have compassion for each winter, even if each winter has its own suffering. I'm not about to discover my winter and then with all my heart give myself over to it. Are you awake? My husband asks. No, I am winter. The older I get, the more I decide I love to walk and walk wild land. So this is called A Little Land. She keeps walking a little land, doesn't own it, can't control its fate, let alone the startled flight of light or mice who die there. She keeps walking a little land and sky, and birds go between, not a doubt among them. Without gate or door, night enters, just as she makes it to the water. Water that holds every last piece of light, but not the smallest stone. I've heard the stones. Stones gather all over my body. 6 in my gut, 3 more in my right leg. I make noise when I walk at night. The unsettled ones knock against my teeth. The man sleeping beside me wakes again to ask, "Are you okay?" Dragging myself into morning, I sit at the table and stare, the stone behind each eye, blind to the difference between longing and lawnmower. I've heard the stones that fall from the sky are cool by the time they land, and heavy as a woman's wish. I heard a man one time make this argument, and I just had to write a poem about it. So it's called "The Man Convinces Me." The man convinces me we are 7 missed meals away from chaos, just as we are 7 days away from God's good work. Every day the sky lives its life, and in today's blue, I see we are an eagle away from flying, a season away from falling. 7 meals from chaos, 7 days from God, and 30 pieces of silver away from dying as soon as we hand over a life we love. One of my earliest memories had to do with my grandmother and her older sisters, and so this poem comes from that. My grandmother and her older sisters taught me to sugar step on the red brick patio in the dark. And the sugar step is kind of like the Charleston or the Lindy. So, even without music, these 4 sisters were back to shushing feet and smoking lips and hoping their mother wouldn't find out. They were back to dark places and men's bodies, back to rhythm and what a body could do. Their knees forgot lamentation, their backs practiced resurrection, and I joined them in the hope that one night I too would be called upon to teach some little girl what it is to dance. And the last one, for any of you who have cats, you know that cats often deliver you gifts, and sometimes the gifts are still alive. So, this is called "The Day We Are Delivered a Rodent's Manifesto." After we get the mouse out of the cat's mouth, I take your hand. It's a moment. We could be off with him, head south where clouds don't stick, so bright and blue keep coming. Freed from shoes and bills, we could enter the multitude, join the big singing. Have you read the obituaries lately? People with the same number of years as us are dying. Obviously, our only choice is to undress and get down to our own small fur, to live like the mouse, close to dead and suddenly free. Thank you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce one of the 2 new English faculty members here at CSB SJU, Dr. Rachel Marston. She received her PhD in Literature and Creative Writing from the University of Utah, and her writing has appeared in Event, The Collegist, and Puerto del Sol, among other journals. It doesn't take many conversations with her to know she is one of those wonderful kinds of people who have that great mix of intelligence, being engaged, and being kind. And so our communities are lucky to have her here. Please help me in welcoming Rachel Marston.
Hello, I am going to be reading you a brief section of my novel in progress called How to Speak to God. And the novel is about nuclear testing in the American West. The protagonist is a young woman named Annie. She is in her early 30s, is married, expecting her first child, struggling with her family's history tied to nuclear testing and the potential consequences for her unborn child, and also thinking about some of her earlier life decisions in this section. Her husband's name is Henry. His hand on her belly, full bellied body, full of baby, her skin stretched balloon belly, Henry rubbed his thumb in circles, starting near her pelvis, those still angled hips, the bones protruding beneath the mound of her skin. He worked over and across, just above the line of pubic hair, thickening like her skin and her ankles, which Annie said she couldn't see anymore when she stood. He moved slowly over the curve of her abdomen, this hardened space of flesh, and along her sides. He rubbed the skin on her breasts, grown 2 sizes larger, moving in and in, smoothing over her darkened areola and nipples, hardening at his touch. So much firmness of flesh. He loved this new body of hers and the body inside of hers, cells and teeth and heartbeat. Baby body inside woman body, this stretching skin, this swelling self. Tuesday night, the stars were bright in the sky, but Annie didn't know the constellations, just the green grass on her back. She rested her hand on this new body, not really hers, shared body or something more. She thought that that was the Big Dipper, part of the Great Bear, and maybe that was Orion's belt. Somewhere in the sky was Cassiopeia. Somewhere in the sky were other planets and galaxies. Somewhere in the sky used to be clouds of ash, a red so deep you thought you were seeing a second sun. She counted 176 stars in the sky. She was sad that she could count them. A baby, her mother said. A baby. George, her mother shouted. George, come here. Annie and Henry are having a baby. Her mother started to cry. Annie pulled the phone cord. She stared out the window, her feet, long and skinny-toed, curled on the windowsill. Her body leaned back into the old chair. I'm so happy, her mother said. 3 boys played ball in the street, the red rubber hitting the side of the Johnsons' garage. Kick, bounce, run. The boys threw their bodies with such force, at each other, at the ball, with their little legs and fierce, dirty faces. One orange shorted in a red shirt, a striped shirted boy in his tan shorts. Annie, her mother said. Yes, happy, said Annie. The boy in orange shorts stood to the side, one hand under his shirt, the other in his mouth. Sad orange-shirted boy, left out of the kicking for minutes and minutes, and it was his ball. His beautiful brown skin peeked out at the waist as he rubbed and rubbed, shifting his weight from right to left. Annie's body swelled and swelled, babied-bodied, a strange coupling. What was this? Genetics? Molecular combination? One day, and there was no more baby in her body, not now, but the first time, years ago. She peed on the strip, trying to count the seconds. 1 extra line appeared on the test. Then she peed into a cup and held the strip into the cup, counted 1 to 10 slowly. She shook the stick even though the package said not to. She shook it as if the movement of her hand could make that second pink line disappear. She buried the tests in the trash under Kleenex and empty boxes so her parents wouldn't find them. She washed her hands and her face. She called the clinic and got an appointment that same afternoon. Not the days of pennyroyal, not the days of an alleyway clinic in the back of someone's house or storefront, but the days of methotrexate and mifepristone, followed by misoprostol. She did not want a baby. She did not tell Henry. She bled for a week or so after, and that was her body. The red of the ball, the boys in the street, the beautiful brown boy sad in his orange shorts. She rests her hand on her pregnant belly. That red from years ago was a brighter red. That red from the ball was a brighter red than what came out of Annie all those years ago. The bright red, the brick wall, the ball, bounce, kick. There was no such thing as generic blood red, only the specific red of her body. She bled for 13 days, and she said nothing to Henry. Thank you. It is my great pleasure to be able to be here as part of this community and to welcome Mary Willette Hughes. She's an alumna of the College of St. Benedict and is deeply connected to the community of St. Ben's and to St. Cloud. She has volunteered for the past 11 years at the St. Cloud Hospital's Recovery Plus program for addiction. She also works with poetry therapy, exploring how poetry can help people overcome addiction and other traumas in their lives. She received the Mother Benedicta Reap Award from the Monastery of St. Benedict in 2010 for striving to exemplify Benedictine and gospel values in her life. She has published 3 books of poetry, and we are privileged to hear from her most recent collection, The Shadow Loom Poems, tonight. Please join me in welcoming Mary Willette Hughes.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be reading from the Shadow Loom Poems, and the title comes from the title poem in the book, the centerpiece poem, which is called The Shadow Loom. And it's from an earliest memory of my mom when we lived on the farm. My mother was a poet as well. And I woke up one night, and this is what happened. The shadow loom. She sits within the glow of a kerosene lamp, a Rembrandt painting. While children sleep and husband is away, writing fills her silence. I wake, a child listening from shadows to the sound of my mother telling her poems to the dark, the rise and fall of her voice, weaving in and out of me. Thank you. A little poem about our children, again a memory, called Butterflies in the Snow. Our 7 children in brightly colored winter snowsuits wait impatiently to rush out, dive in, and taste first snow. I hear voices ring loud, wild, and free as last night's wind. Joy whirls, swirls in our yard, tousling deep drifted snow. Now, lying flat on their backs, arms sweep back and forth, imprinting half circles across the virgin white landscape. They stop, rest, silence falls. Snowsuits rise like butterflies, take wings against a waiting sky. You all know about the terrible storm that we had 2 weeks ago where they said 80,000 cattle perished, and they're still finding them. This poem is called Storm, and it really is about aging. And I'm remembering when we were children that if a big storm was coming, that they would tie a rope from the kitchen door to the barn door so that the farmer could get out to feed the livestock and then come back home again and not get lost in the blizzard. So all of those things are kind of mixed up in this poem. 3 times you will hear a refrain that comes back and talks about the rope. Storm, you will be led where you do not want to go. Where is the rope to clutch and hold, to follow hand over hand? Old age comes on strong, strong as the winter storm forecast for northern Minnesota on last night's news. A blizzard is here in me. It is fierce, unrelenting, and I am lost in the center of it. There is no going back, and ahead, only a cavern of the unknown. Where is the rope to clutch and hold, to follow hand over hand? One by one, diminishments come, defining my days. Night fears tunnel hollow bones and swirl me in the winds of this wilderness. Anger burns within, melts all resolve to age gracefully. My soul stumbles in shifting drifts. My body, huddled, stark, waits below the darkening snow. Oh, where is the rope to clutch and hold, to follow hand over hand? Very much different mood. December kiss. Night so cold, our breath lingers diaphanous. Midnight spills a filigree of frost. Your lips smooth with sweet chill. You tilt my head, cover my mouth with yours, and I taste the new wine of your winter kiss. The book is divided into 5 themed sections, and within each section there are poems that are on the same page, so to speak. A love poem for my Mark. Black wool overcoat. You wear a cloak of kindness, like that old full-length coat you have worn for many years. It wrapped your body warmly as you held me tenderly before leaving to teach on winter days. But it wasn't always so. Do you remember when sandpaper words were harsh against our hearts? When wounds gouged a ravine and tears were a river between us? But now, in these rich harvest years of children giving grandchildren, there comes a pause each evening when we remember the planted and replanted furrows of our days, the full granaries, the drought, and withered crops. Even though fierce storms descended on us, our joined hands never let go. This winter morning, your old coat still hangs in the closet. You put it on, but leave it unbuttoned. Your arms open wide and draw me inside. Last poem. Called Holiday Aftermath. Why is it, dear husband, when celebrating great high feasts like Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's Day, Groundhog Day, Valentine's Day, Easter, 4th of July, Halloween, birthdays, anniversaries, and National Pickle Day, that you always exercise such noble gastronomical restraint. And why is it I hone a solemn, solitary obligation to regard all leftovers in cupboards, refrigerators, and on countertops like a bodice ripper paperback that must be read? No, that must be devoured. And all the while, nibbling and nibbling, I grow roundly, poundly by poundly. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. You can see why we're so excited to celebrate all of this work. That brings tonight to a conclusions, but we do, as mentioned, have books over there. One last plug, if you enjoyed this, come next week to, again, Catherine Powers on Tuesday and Rue Freeman on Wednesday. Thanks very much. Oh, and you can sign up to, if you want to get information about future literary arts events, we have a sign-up sheet back there too. Thanks so much for coming. And one more round of applause for our writers, please.